Some things in our world never seem to find an answer, and in some cases, those mysteries spill out and are in direct relation to ourselves. Whether it be strange mutations yet discovered by science, or individuals so cruel in their nature we question if they are human, we as a species leave behind many questions that never seem to be resolved. So today, we shall be looking into 5 unsolved mysteries across the globe. Axeman of New Orleans. The Axeman of New Orleans was a serial killer active in New Orleans, Louisiana, as well as surrounding towns, from May 1918 to October 1919. Press reports during the height of public panic about the killings mentioned similar attacks as early as 1911, but recent researchers have held some speculation to these claims. As the killer's title implies, the victims usually were attacked with an axe, which often belonged to the victims themselves. In most cases, the back door of a home was smashed, followed by an attack on one or more of the residents with either an axe or straight razor. The crimes were not robberies, and the perpetrator never removed items from his victims' homes. The majority of the Axeman's victims were Italian American, leading many to believe that the crimes were racially motivated. Many media outlets sensationalized this aspect of the crimes, even suggesting mafia involvement, despite the lack of evidence. Some crime analysts have suggested that the killings were related to sex, and that the murderer was perhaps a sadist seeking female victims. Criminologists Colin and Damon Wilson come to a possible conclusion supported by cases in which the woman of the household was murdered, but not the man. A much wilder theory is that the killer committed the murders in an attempt to promote jazz music. This being suggested by a letter attributed to the killer in which he stated that he would spare the lives of those who played jazz in their homes. The Axeman was not caught or identified, and his crime spree stopped as mysteriously as it had started. The murderer's identity remains unknown to this day, although various possible identifications of varying plausibility have been proposed. On March 13th, 1919, a letter purporting to be from the Axeman was published in newspapers, saying that he would kill again at 15 minutes past midnight on the night of March 19th, but would spare any and all occupants of a residence where a jazz band was playing. That night, all of New Orleans dance halls were filled to capacity, and professional and amateur bands played jazz at parties at hundreds of houses around town. No murders would partake that night. Not everyone was intimidated by the Axeman. Some well-armed citizens submitted announcements to newspapers challenging the Axeman to visit their houses. One promised to leave a window open for the Axeman, politely asking that he not damage the front door. The foretold letter that stirred all this panic and defensiveness reads as such. Hell, March 19th, 1919. Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleans and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only assume me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it was better that they were never born than than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleans think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the Angel of Death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it on Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fancy. The Axeman. Axeman remains to this day one of the region's most notorious serial killers, an unknown assailant who leaves only suffering and mystery in his wake. Hinterkaifeck Family Farm. Hinterkaifeck was a farm located within the woods outside Gruber, Germany, between the Bavarian towns of Ingolstadt and Schrobenhausen, about an hour's drive from Munich. The farm was occupied by a family called the Grubers, which consisted of the husband Andreas, his wife Cecilia, their middle-aged widowed daughter Victoria, and their 2 grandchildren. The family lived in relative isolation, the farm being nestled away in a forest 1 kilometer away from the nearest main town. The farm's descent into true strangeness started when the maid suddenly quit her job and wished to leave immediately. When asked why she had so suddenly decided to abruptly leave, Maria explained that she had been hearing strange voices and other noises in and around the house, as well as the sound of disembodied footsteps emanating from the attic. The terror-stricken maid had become convinced that the house was haunted and wished to leave as soon as possible. 6 months later, things got more bizarre when in the middle of March 1922, Andreas was surveying his property after a snowstorm and discovered odd footprints in the snow that originated in the thick surrounding forest and led right up to the house. Eerily, there were no footprints to be found that actually led back to the woods. Andreas searched all around the property, looking for any further signs of the mysterious trail, but none could be found. Even after a more thorough investigation of the property, nothing could be found pointing to there being an intruder. That same night, Andreas was awoken by strange, inexplicable noises coming from the attic. Remembering what the maid had said about ghosts and the noises from the attic, he checked there too, but found nobody hiding there. With apparently nobody hiding on the property and no footprints leading back out into the woods, it seemed like the trespasser had simply vanished. Satisfied that no one was there, yet still a bit unsettled, Andreas went to bed, only to wake up the next morning to find a strange newspaper on the porch that no one in the family recognized. Not long after that, on March 30th, 1922, a set of keys to the house mysteriously disappeared and could not be found anywhere. In his search for the keys, Andreas came upon the disturbing discovery of scratches on the lock to the tool shed, as if someone had tried to pick it. On the 31st, amid all of this high strangeness, a new maid by the name of Maria Baumgartner came to the house to replace the one that had fled in a panic 6 months earlier. Maria's first day on the job would prove to be her last, and this would also be the last day anyone would see the Grubers alive. On April 4th, people in town became concerned about the Grubers, as no one had seen any of the family in days, and the older grandchild had not been attending school. In addition, none of them had been to church, and the Grubers' unclaimed mail had been piling up at the post office. A few of the townspeople decided to head up to their property, check on them, and see what was going on. Upon arriving at the farm, the search party's calls went unanswered. A preliminary check of the outside of the farm turned up no sign of the family, and the whole place had an eerily quiet atmosphere. The search group decided to inspect inside the barn. Upon opening the door, they were met with a gruesome sight. There, lying in a pool of blood, were the bodies of Andreas, his wife, his daughter, Victoria, and the elder granddaughter, Kazilia. Their bodies had been carefully stacked on top of each other and covered with hay. The horrified search party proceeded to frantically look for the other members of the family and found them in the farmhouse. The youngest grandchild, Joseph, was found dead in his cot in his mother's bedroom, and the maid, Maria, was also found killed in her bedchamber. Both had also bled profusely and were found lying in pools of coagulated blood. In total, 6 people, all 5 Gruber family members, plus 1 maid, had been brutally dispatched in cold blood. Upon further analysis of the bodies, turned up some very unusual findings. The date of death was determined to be Friday, March 31st, 1922. But after questioning the neighbors of the farm, this proved to be rather bizarre. It was discovered that witnesses near the farmhouse had seen smoke coming from the chimney over the entire weekend, suggesting someone had been home. The house also had evidence that someone had only recently eaten meals there, and one of the beds appeared to have been slept in not long before the bodies had been discovered. In addition, it was found that all of the cattle and livestock were well fed and had recently eaten, which was an odd finding, seeing as everyone who typically cared for them had been dead for nearly a week. In fact, none of the animals on the farm had been harmed in any way. The dog, which was found barking in the barn, had been found patiently tied up by whoever had killed the family and was shaken but otherwise healthy. All this information had left investigators rather puzzled, as it implied that whoever had killed the family had done their dark deed and then stayed around for several days, feeding the cattle and making themselves at home before fleeing the scene. Why would anyone do that, you may ask? Well, as of today, nobody truly knows. Jane Rimmer. Between the years of 1996 and 1997, the Claremont region of West Australia was struck with a devastating and mysterious spree of disappearances. These disappearances involved 3 young women who all seemingly vanished after attending night spots in Claremont. At the time, police investigators were even led to believe the possible involvement of a serial killer. The whole case began in January 1996 with the first victim named Sarah Spires, who would go missing after leaving a nightclub and calling for a taxi. When the vehicle would come to pick her up, Spires was nowhere to be found. The second girl, named Jane Rimmer, would disappear come June of the same year and in the same area. Rimmer's body would be found a few months later in August. Come March the following year, the final girl, Sierra Glennon, whose body would be found in April in a northern suburb of Perth. As Glennon's body was discovered, police began to believe the idea of a serial killer who may be prowling the Claremont area, which all girls held in common. In fact, all three girls either attended a pub named the Continental or the nightclub known as Club Bayview. The Western Australian Police even established a special task force to investigate this case, dubbed Marco. Initial suspicion focused on the taxi drivers in the Perth area due to it being the location the women were seen, as well as it relating well with the circumstances the night of their disappearances. A mass DNA testing exercise was carried out to cover all the taxi drivers licensed in Western Australia, a collection capping over 2,000. In the end, this had the beneficial side effect of improving the quality of the taxi service and enhancing the confidence of the public in using it. The investigation itself does not appear to have progressed. The next major development to occur involved a junior officer of the Western Australian Public Service, targeted by police as the prime suspect after he attracted their attention during a decoy operation. The suspect made himself known to the media and asserted his innocence. He was subjected to high levels of overt surveillance with the purpose of prompting a confession. Although this continued for several years, the suspect continued to maintain his innocence and appears to have intact alibis. The police declared late 2008 that he was no longer a person of interest. As of now, the kidnapper has yet to be identified. Ricky McCormick. Letters written before death are not an uncommon practice, whether they be written while on one's deathbed or sadly in moments before contemplating taking one's own life. In special circumstances, these notes and letters may lead to more mysteries than solutions as to the tragic end of an individual. One such case involved two handwritten documents that were found in the pockets of murder victim Ricky McCormick, whose body was discovered in a field in St. Charles County, Missouri on June 30th, 1999. Attempts by the FBI's Cryptanalytics Racketeering Records Unit, CRRU, and the American Cryptogram Association failed to decipher the meanings of those two coded notes. On March 29, 2011, the U.S. Federal Bureau of Investigation issued an appeal to help from the public in obtaining the meaning of the messages. News stories in 1999 also did not mention anything about cipher messages, which were not announced until 12 years later, when the FBI listed the death as a murder and posted a notice for help on the main page of their website. Investigators believe that the notes in McCormick's pants pockets were written within the 3 days before his death. The two notes are written in an unknown code consisting of a jumble of letters and numbers, occasionally set off with parentheses, and are believed by the FBI to possibly lead to those responsible for the killing. Dan Olson, chief of the FBI's Cryptanalytics and Racketeering Records Unit, stated while illustrating the significance of the notes,
"Breaking the code could reveal the victim's whereabouts before his death and could lead to the solution of a homicide."
Attempts by both the FBI's Cryptanalytics and Racketeering Records Unit and the American Cryptogram Association failed to decipher their meaning. Ricky McCormick's encrypted notes are currently listed as one of CRRU's top unsolved cases, with the killer yet to be identified. According to members of McCormick's family, McCormick had used encrypted notes since he was a boy, but apparently, no one in his family knows how to decipher the codes either. His mother, Frankie Sparks, stated once in an interview, the only thing he could write was his name. He didn't write in no code. McCormick's father, Charles McCormick, said, Ricky couldn't spell anything, just scribble. It was noted that although other contents of the victim's pockets were revealed to the family members, they knew nothing about the notes, until the local evening news broadcast a report on the codes 12 years later, only adding more and more confusion to this still not fully solved case. Jack Ramsey, Little Boy Potpie. Nathaniel Benjamin Levi Bar-Jonah was a convicted felon and alleged cannibal who was serving a 130-year prison sentence without the possibility of parole in Montana after being convicted of kidnapping, aggravated assault, and sexual assault of various children. In late March of 1975, Bar-Jonah, impersonating a police officer, abducted 8-year-old Richard O'Connor while he was on his way to school, only proceeding to perform horrible acts before strangling the boy. A neighbor, looking out of her window, observed the abduction and notified authorities, who began searching for the boy. A patrol car later observed a car matching that used in the abduction, parked far away from others in a parking lot, and after calling for backup, ordered Bar-Jonah out of the car. O'Connor was found in the car, bloodied and near the point of death. A few days before his high school graduation, Bar-Jonah drove to nearby Hartford, Connecticut, and, impersonating a police officer, abducted a 9-year-old girl, whom he savagely assaulted in the car. After the child began vomiting and convulsing from the assault, he drove up to a sidewalk and threw the girl out of the car. A nearby witness saw the incident and got his license plate, leading to his arrest. This assault never got back to Bar-Jonah's probation officer, and he was released on parole in May 1976 for his earlier abduction and sexual assault of an 8-year-old boy. When Bar-Jonah's probationary period was over, he received a letter thanking him for his cooperation. On September 24, 1977, Bar-Jonah, claiming to be an undercover FBI agent, convinced 2 boys coming out of White City Cinemas in Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, to enter his vehicle. Bar-Jonah then transported the boys to a secluded area where he handcuffed them and then proceeded to strangle and flick cigarette ashes upon them. After assaulting one of the boys, Bar-Jonah believed he had killed him, driving off with the other still alive in his trunk. However, the boy regained consciousness and managed to find help, leading shortly thereafter to Bar-Jonah's arrest. The other boy was found, still alive, in his trunk. For this crime, he was convicted of attempted murder and received the maximum sentence of 18 to 20 years in prison. While in prison, he was transferred to the Bridgewater State Hospital. On March 22, 1984, he changed his name to Nathaniel Benjamin Levi Bar-Jonah. Later in the same year, Superior Court Judge Walter E. Steele ruled that Massachusetts had failed to prove that Bar-Jonah was dangerous, and he was released before moving to Great Falls, Montana. During this time, Bar-Jonah confided in his psychiatrist that he had a deep fascination and curiosity with the taste of human flesh and had innumerable murderous fantasies. On August 9, 1991, just a month after being released from Bridgewater State Hospital, Bar-Jonah observed a 7-year-old boy sitting alone in a car outside of a post office in Oxford, Massachusetts. Bar-Jonah, a fully grown man, entered the vehicle and sat on the boy, thrusting his mass atop the boy's fragile chest. Some witnesses, along with the boy's mother, observed the event and ran to the boy's rescue, causing Bar-Jonah to flee. An officer recognized Bar-Jonah's description from over 15 years earlier, and he was later arrested for the attack. At first, Bar-Jonah claimed he had entered the car to get out of the rain, but later admitted that he intended to kill the boy. For the attack, Bar-Jonah was sentenced to probation in Montana. Bar-Jonah's earliest interest in the taste of human flesh can be traced to his childhood. Beginning at about the age of 6, he would pick at his scabs until his skin was festering, then proceed to suck the blood from his own wound. His teachers at Webster Elementary School would call his mother numerous times to notify her that her son's habit was upsetting the teachers and students. When he was incarcerated in Montana State Prison, many of the guards observed him performing the same habit. One guard reported that once Bar-Jonah had the scab in his mouth, that he appeared to be having sex. Although Bar Jonah was known to be a voracious eater who weighed in excess of 300 pounds, financial records indicated that he had not made any significant grocery store purchases for nearly a month after Zach Ramsey disappeared. A boy was known to be missing and believed kidnapped, one in which later evidence discovered in Bar Jonah's residency would be connected to. After Zach Ramsey's disappearance, Bar Jonah also began to hold cookouts in which he was reported to serve burgers, spaghetti, chili, meat pies, casseroles, and the like to guests. At many of these cookouts, a number of persons told Bar Jonah that the meat had a peculiar taste to it. Bar Jonah's response was that he had gone deer hunting and used the deer meat in the dishes. However, Bar Jonah did not own a rifle, a hunting license, nor had he been deer hunting at any time. In Bar Jonah's apartment, detectives also found a number of recipes using children's body parts with contemptuous titles, such as Little Boy Potpie, French Fried Kid, and phrases such as lunch is served on the patio with the roasted child. In the decoded journals, Bar Jonah also referenced serving these recipes to neighbors. Also in his apartment was found hair inside of a meat grinder. When the hair was tested for DNA, it was found to belong to an African-American male, but did not belong to Zach Ramsey. The DNA of the hair was also different from child bone fragments found in Bar Jonah's garage, which also did not belong to Ramsey. A case that cements the reality that we clearly live in a disturbing and damaged world. Tell me in the comments section, do you have any theories about any of these mysteries? If you find it mysterious, then share and like this video. Also be sure to subscribe because you really don't want to miss what is coming next. As always, thank you for watching.